say I didn't warn ya.
U.S. leaders profess a dedication to democracy, yet over the last 50 years, the U.S. national security state has been a key force in overthrowing reformist democratic governments in Guatemala, in Guyana, in the Dominican Republic, in Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, Syria, Indonesia under Sukarno, Greece twice, Argentina twice, Haiti, Bolivia, and other countries. It's a very incomplete list. Those are the ones I wrote down on the plane, just come to my head. And replace them in each case with pro-capitalist military regimes that open up their markets, resources, and cheap labor. By cheap labor, I mean unorganized labor, I mean underpaid labor, I mean labor that's intimidated by goon squads and death squads. Open them up to U.S. corporate investors on terms that are completely favorable to the investors. U.S. has been active in covert actions and proxy mercenary wars against popular revolutionary governments in Cuba, Angola, Mozambique, Ethiopia, Portugal, South Yemen, Nicaragua, Cambodia, East Timor, Western Sahara, and elsewhere. Another incomplete list. Against reformist governments in Egypt, Lebanon, Peru, Iran under Mossadegh, Syria, Zaire, Jamaica, the Fiji Islands, Afghanistan. U.S. forces with direct aggression and invasion have attacked just in recent years, in the last few decades, Vietnam, the Dominican Republic, North Korea, Laos, either with direct total invasion or aerial attack or both, North Korea, Laos, Cambodia, Yugoslavia, Lebanon, Grenada, Panama, Libya, Iraq twice, Somalia. We will not convince our compatriots of the wrongful nature of this kind of policy unless we discuss the real intent and interest behind such policy. As long as they believe that this is being done to protect them from some threats out there, they will go along with it. They don't care if their leaders are rough. They don't care if their leaders violate international law. They want them to violate international law. They want them to act like thugs and gangsters. They want them to be tough and brutal and total and decisive. That's called strong leadership. That's called strong defense. When they are afraid, and that is what our leadership has done, is to conjure up fears that there's people out there going to get us. For a long time, it was the communist menace. The communists are going to get you. This is all because of communists. We have to do this. We have to support dictators because we got to stop those communists. But a lot of these interventions came way before communism, and a lot more of them are happening more frequently, more bloodily after communism. So it wasn't communism. That was one of the excuses. That was one of the bugaboos that they raised up. That was one of the fears they conjured up so that people will rally around the flag and will do what the leaders want. And we've got to speak to that fear and say, you have a false fear. There are things you really should be afraid of and you're not afraid of it, like poisoning the environment, like going and killing all these people, like putting your democracy at risk, like having your public treasure devoured by a rapacious military and a rapacious corporate America. Those are real things you should fear, and stop fearing some little country. One year it's Noriega, the next year it's Milosevic, the next year it's Gaddafi, the next year it's the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, the next year Saddam Hussein. Do you remember Gaddafi? I remember 1980s. In the 1980s, I was going around lecturing, and suddenly I hear people saying to me, Gaddafi, Gaddafi. Everybody was Gaddafiing. Gaddafi. What about Gaddafi? Gaddafi, 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 go and get your mama, Gaddafi. Where's Gaddafi? I said, what Gaddafi, what? 2 months ago, you couldn't have found Libya on the map. Today, you're convinced that this guy, head of a country of 3 million people, with an army of 50,000, about the size of the LAPD, is a mortal threat to the safety of the United States of America, to the national security. And what was Gaddafi's real sin? I'll tell you what his real sin was, because that policy wasn't stupid when they targeted Gaddafi. And their animosity toward him is a very legitimate one. Here's what Gaddafi did. Gaddafi took a country that had a social structure like Saudi Arabia, where a few obscenely rich families ran the whole thing, got all the money from the oil, and the mass of people were poor. And what he did is he kicked those families out, he and his colonel's rebellion, and he started a forestation program. He planted millions of trees. He started health programs, education, school programs. For the first time in the history, the ordinary Libyans could go to school. That's what he was doing. And he nationalized the oil industry. And he took the earnings from the oil industry. He still sold it to the Western markets. What are they going to do with it? They can't drink it. They can't eat it. Sure, they are more than happy to sell it to the West. But they were getting the cut on it. And that money is what he used, and he gave that back to the people. And that's not what they like. Because the difference between the haves and the have-nots, I mean, the truth is, in the conflict between the haves and the have-nots, the haves are really the have-it-alls. They want it all, and they don't want to give a little bit here and a little there. The U.S. government since World War II has given away some $300 billion in military aid. Just think what $300 billion, that could solve all the budgetary crises of all the states in the Union right now. Just that amount. Aid to train, equip, and subsidize some 2.5 million troops and internal security forces in more than 80 countries, not to defend these nations from outside invasion, but to protect ruling oligarchs and multinational corporate investors from the dangers of domestic anti-capitalist insurgency. There's clear evidence that the U.S.-supported military and security forces and death squads in these various countries have been used repeatedly to destroy popular reformist movements and insurgencies that advocate some kind of egalitarian redistribution of the resources of the society. So the struggle really is between those who think that the land, the labor, the natural resources, the markets, the technology, and the capital of the world in every country are there for the capital accumulation process and enrichment of the few, as opposed to those who think all those things are there for the needs and the social betterment of the many. And that's the basic struggle that goes on. The designated enemy, the demonized enemy, pumped up by the media, obligingly following the line the White House or the Pentagon puts out. The designated enemy can be a reformist, populist military government, as in Panama under Torrijos and even under Noriega, or as in Egypt under Nasser, Peru under Velasco, Portugal after Salazar, when the army officers took over. It could be a Christian socialist government, as in Nicaragua under the Sandinistas. It could be a social democracy, popular front government, as in Chile under Allende, or Jamaica under Michael Manley, or Greece under Papandreou, the Dominican Republic under Juan Bosch. It could be a Marxist-Leninist government, as in Cuba, Vietnam, and North Korea, an Islamic revolutionary order, as in Libya under Gaddafi, or even a conservative militarist regime, as in Iraq under Saddam Hussein. When those same politicians wrap themselves around in the flag, and when they point to some evil out there, some threat that's going to come get you, why then our same compatriots suddenly discard their cynicism, discard their skepticism, and with childlike trust, they say, we've got to support the president. We've got to support the president. You know, I heard a student once say to me, he said, that's the difference between you and me. He said, I have faith in President Bush. He was talking about George I. He says, I have faith. I said, excuse me? You have faith in the president? What are we doing here, religion or politics? You have faith in Georgie Bush? Like my Italian grandma had faith in St. Anthony. You have a picture of Bush on your bureau with a little candle. You light it, you go, oh, Madonna, oh, Georgie Bush. He said, well, I trust the president. I said, there too, you trust the president? Trust, is that what we're dealing with here? Trust, which is something that you should reserve only for your friends and close companions or close family members, and even them, check them all out once in a while, right? You're all laughing, you know, right? No, democracy is not about trust. Democracy is about distrust. It's about accountability. It's about exposure. It's about debate. It's about getting the things out on the table. It's about challenging them. That's what it's about.